Hey, it's me, Rob Ryan. Welcome back to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And I got to ask you a question. Who would have thought that you could upend hundreds of years, if not longer, of accepted practices around how to network, how to meet with your peers, how to build relationships, how to build social connection, right? We've all thought, I grew up thinking, we've all thought that the only way to do that was to meet after office hours, happy hour, at night, over drinks, at a party. Right? Alcohol fueled networking was the only way that we got through this. Who would have thought that you could take and upend all that and accomplish the same thing, if not better, first thing in the morning over breakfast? Well, I'll tell you who would have thought that. The guest on this week's episode, Morgan Barrett, who is a young attorney from New York City, now living bi-coastally in New York and Los Angeles. And he talks to us not only about his own journey, how he got into the law and why he became a lawyer and not hypothetically the most popular English literature professor at the University of Virginia, which is another path he could have taken in life, according to me. But he shares with us the origin story, the serendipitous, kind of somewhat unintentional origin story of the Tech Breakfast Club and the emerging, growing, rapidly growing Tech Breakfast Club community that has blown up all around the country. New York City, Los Angeles, now San Francisco, and coming to a city near you soon. So if you're a Tech Breakfast Club community member, or you're in the entrepreneurial economy here in the United States and you want to learn more about how to build great relationships over breakfast, this is the episode for you. So we hope you enjoy it as much as we did making it for you. Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, welcome back or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers, the show where every week I get to talk with the best and brightest entrepreneurial thinkers across every sector and segment of society and industry today. And today's guest is no different. I'm super excited to be joined from across town somewhere here in LA by my friend Morgan Barrett, who's an associate at Optimal Counsel, LLP, and probably better known as the creator of the ubiquitously popular technology and investor community known as Tech Breakfast Club, which we're going to talk about mostly today. We're going to kind of dig into his community builder part of his resume and life experiences. So let me tell you a little bit more about Morgan, the lawyer and community builder, before we jump in and welcome him to the show. Morgan is a burst of fresh, unconventional energy in a field, the law, that tends to be pretty buttoned down and frankly kind of boring, especially on the East Coast. He's creative, he's fun, and he's a really natural relationship builder. Which is why we've always hit it off kind of in our early days friendship here. He's an early career attorney based in New York City and Los Angeles, where he's joining us from today, who specializes in guiding startups and emerging growth companies through the complexities of formation, operations, venture capital, and M&A. He's got a JD from Columbia Law School. Wow, pretty impressive resume. And a BA from the University of Virginia. I think it's the Wahoos, something like that. That's what we say at the University of Virginia people, the Cavaliers to us sports fans. And Morgan brings those experiences and all of his positive, supportive energy to every client he serves. But in the tech world here in the United States, he's probably far better known for founding the explosively growing community of tech founders, investors, executives, and service providers known as the Tech Breakfast Club, which is a thriving community built around breakfast networking. Not the typical nighttime booze fests that we're all used to in this industry. It's presently regularly hosting events in both New York City and Los Angeles. And today, although I think I saw some stuff on social media already that tips the answer to this question later, but today we're going to find out if there are more cities in the plan. And I think we already know the answer. So Morgan, welcome, buddy. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Huge honor.
It's a pleasure. I could also say, for those that'll watch this on YouTube, I'll paint a picture for those that'll listen to this on their favorite audio podcast feeds. He also might be ubiquitously known for wearing a ball cap or a golf cap like he's wearing right now as well, with his long flowing mane.
Yeah, well, story behind that too. We can talk about that.
Please. I didn't know there was a story behind that. Go for it.
Yeah, well, all right. So not to shift the energy from being like celebratory and just a great hangout, but you know this. But a couple years ago, my dad tragically died, and it's just like a way to honor him every day wearing one of his hats. Okay. I'm a bit bigger than him. So I can't fit any of his clothes, but I can wear some of his hats. And
That's
so every
awesome.
day just is, you get such a kick out of my life now and all the people I get to meet and all the people I get to hang out with. And I, so often just want to pick up the phone and call him and tell him like this just
Right.
happened, or, my buddy Rob is starting something new, or, I'm working with this incredible founder, and it's painful not to be able to do that, but honoring him every day and bringing him along for the adventure, getting to wear the hat, it is my small way of remembering him. And like today, I'm wearing a Beaver Creek hat, and one of the things that we love to do together, one of our shared passions, skiing. So
Okay.
I was super grateful to him for introducing me to the sport, and we got to enjoy it a lot. So yeah, that story might sound a little sad or a little, I never know to share it or not, but yeah, it's just like a fun way to bring them along on the adventure.
No, that's awesome, and a great story to share, and frankly, a great story to kick off with, because it's just another part of you, and that's the whole point. Is we're going to talk about some of the things that you work on, and kind of how you thought differently about those, obviously, but also it's just part of the journey of just sharing who you are. I have a question now, unprompted. I wasn't going to ask this, but I am now based on some of what you just shared. Was your dad as much a people person as you are?
I would say he was a bit more introverted. Not that I
Okay.
feel, this might surprise people, but I don't feel like I'm a super extrovert. A bit more introverted, very thoughtful guy, but super supportive and enthusiastic about, anything that I wanted to try in my life. And he was always encouraging me to, take a risk, try something. Super grateful to him for working hard and like setting me up and putting me in a position where,
Right.
I can go out on a limb and try something new, and, have the confidence to just test some things out and see what works.
That's awesome, and I'm super excited. I'm glad you shared that story, also because I knew the background story of your relationship with your dad and his loss, obviously that the tragedy behind that. But now I feel kind of extra special. I feel like he's an extra guest on our show now, which is really cool.
Yeah, he get a huge
That
kick out of that. I
no,
think
that's
I think you guys would have gotten along.
he's listening to this show at some point, so he's enjoying the fact that he's part of this process with us. So that's awesome. All right, so first big important question. This will get us kicked off, and we're going to cover all kinds of ground today here in the limited time that you have. Share with us, pancakes or waffles?
Oof. I feel like the ceiling is higher on pancakes. Um,
Okay,
it's, I'm thinking about all the waffles I've had in my life, and there hasn't really been a bad waffle. There's been some pretty good waffles, but pancakes, if you get it right, and it can just be life changing. Like a
it's
pan.
really true.
So I
I'm
I
with you.
big fan of Waffle House, which might not be.
Okay,
Is that a West Coast thing, or is that solely an East Coast, like
very very East Coast, very East
East
Coast
Coast, like yeah?
southeast thing. Yeah.
So big Waffle House fan. Everything has its time and place, I guess. But you
Right.
know, I've had some pretty good
Yeah,
pancakes.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think, ironically, I probably eat waffles more often. My favorite breakfast spot in Los Feliz is a waffle place primarily. I mean, they do all kinds of other stuff and lots of bougier foods for brunch for the locals, but the place across the street, which is one of my favorite lunch and dinner spots, actually does like a really bougie upscale brunch, and they have really fancy pancakes. Right, so I'm a little bit more mainstream dude. So I opt for the slightly cheaper place across the street that has really good waffles.
Yeah,
But I'm with you. I think you can do more creatively with pancakes than you can with waffles. Waffles are what they are, pretty much. It's a very utilitarian breakfast food. But that's awesome. All right, so hey, thanks for having fun with that question. I thought no better question for the Tech Breakfast Club guy than what's the preferred choice, right? So. Here's the bigger kind of more normal background question, right? Like you're a young lawyer, you got a great start educationally at places like Columbia and UVA. you could be working on Wall Street, you could be working in private equity, making a ton of money, wearing the suit and tie, walking the streets of Manhattan, making big deals. What drew you to early stage tech startup life? Because it's a very different path.
Yeah, so at Columbia, and a lot of the top law schools are very similar in the education that you receive and kind of the makeup of the student body, but each law school kind of has a different flavor. Some law schools will be more politically oriented. Some law schools have more of a focus on like public interest or public service. Columbia is about as buttoned up as it gets. Most of my peers, like some will go into litigation, which is like, hey, we're trying big civil cases, and we'll occasionally go to court. Um, there's that on litigation, but the corporate side lawyers, they're the ones papering deals, doing these massive mergers and acquisitions. Columbia leans heavily towards the corporate side of the law. The majority of my peers are working at firms like Kirkland or Skadden or like Davis Polk, and they're doing these massive billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions or financings of some sort, and super lucrative. That's incredibly lucrative, and it's important work. But the day-to-day experience, like, could not be further from what I get to enjoy.
Right.
As a junior attorney, you rarely get to talk to the client. You rarely make an impact on a deal. You're kind of a cog in a machine. And, you know, what are you going to tell Apollo? What are you going to tell KKR or any of these giant private equity firms that they don't already know? They've done 100 of these deals. There's nothing that's life-changing. Where you go to the other end of the spectrum and work with early stage founders, and even if they're repeat founders, they've already had a successful exit, they're still, in most cases, not experts on how to get a deal done.
Right.
It's still a novel experience for them, even if they've raised money multiple times. So you actually make a difference, one, and then two, you get to talk to your clients. You get to interact with them, and not always, but most of the time, they're very, very appreciative of your counsel, of your advice. Sometimes, you know, there's a business aspect to the advice that you have to give. It's not like purely legal. It's like, from a business standpoint, this is probably going to be a better move for you. That's very interesting. So even though, you know, the legal work itself is not super complicated, a lot of it looks the same from company to company, no matter if you're doing like biotech or like a traditional SaaS company or like a direct to consumer CPG company. All the legal work looks pretty much the same and can be a bit repetitive. But the personalities that you get to deal with and these entrepreneurs who have crazy ideas and and that's been one of the most remarkable things is like, I love a good SaaS company. I love somebody who's trying to make this more efficient, or, you know, we need another industry specific CRM. Like, that's great. That's super valuable. But then you'll come across founders who are attempting crazy things, whether it's like space manufacturing, or they're trying to change the weather, or all. And then especially in LA, you get like defense tech and hard tech. So all that to say is, at Columbia, when I said I wanted to work with startups, and I'd worked for a startup before law school, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. We'd raised money. I enjoyed the experience. But I would tell my peers, like, hey, this is going to be a lot more fun. You're going to really enjoy life. And they'd be like, yeah, it sounds interesting, but I think I'm still going to go the more traditional route. And so, yeah, I really resisted the trend or the currents, to go early stage.
No, so about 25 years ago or so, when I was your age, and our law firm, first startup, my first startup, but our law firm happened to be big corporate law firm just because of a personal relationship that someone had. So we wound up basically way overspending for lawyerly stuff with the guys at Gibson Dunn. And I can tell you at that time, like because of my age, like I was drawn to friendships with all of the early years associates.
Mm-hmm.
And I could count maybe one of the group of 10 or 12 of them that stuck with it and kind of stayed, and now and lived the partnership track, and kind of built an entire career out of it. And everybody else eventually left out because the grind just wore them out, right? And they were, like you
Yeah.
said, they were the cog in that wheel of that big machine that basically served the partners. And
Which is exactly the model, and it's a shame because there's so much brain power and so many really smart, talented individuals, and you look at their capacity for hard work, and it's mind-blowing that you can bill 2,500 hours on like actual client work, and then you add another couple hundred hours on all the administrative stuff that you have to do, and it's very impressive, the capacity that these super intelligent people have. But then you have to wonder, like, well, what if you're trying something a little bit more entrepreneurial or helping entrepreneurs, or like what could you accomplish with that same kind of like raw material?
No, they all, by and large, the group that I'm referencing all went on and did amazing, more creative kind of individual things in their careers. What was interesting about that dynamic was that they got attached to me or got to know me because their partner, my partner in this case, basically was so like delegated so much of the real work of his relationship. And he was so kind of self-assured and cocky of where he was in his career path already, that he let these young people actually interact with me quite a bit. Right. And it was also a mechanism to kind of keep our spend down a bit too. Right. And so they loved it, right? They spoon fed that they could get to interact with the client. And I was basically their peer, right? I was this late 20s, 30, early 30 something guy who was building something. And they were like, we don't have any clients like this. This is awesome. Right. And the fact that he lets us like interact with you on a regular basis is awesome. So it was quite a fun experience. Alternatively, you could have been like the most popular, English lit professor at UVA right now and not gone into the law at all, right?
Well, there was a point in my undergrad career where I got a lot of funding to do research, and I got published in the top archaeological journal for my little niche, and I was like, wow, do I want to go get a PhD? Do I want to go the professor route? This is so satisfying intellectually, but really I found out that I just like teaching, and I like explaining things, and I like helping people, and you can do that in any field if you're creative. So there was a point where, and if you think the legal field is frustrating to advance in, then like academia is like twice that.
I was going to say, right. Yeah, no, that's 100% true. You were destined for kind of where you're headed now, not where your roots were. That's for sure. Legal question, kind of before we transition, start talking about some of the other things that you're working on. Just like for founders that are listening, right? For entrepreneurs, executives, young executives, maybe that are early in their business building. You've got relationships, obviously, with hundreds, probably thousands at this point of young startup entrepreneurs. What are some common legal issues, or maybe even mistakes that you see them making regularly right now that we could help them avoid?
Yeah, so there's this tension when you start a company, because you can, like, maybe your experience overspending on legal fees to get everything buttoned up and perfect. But there's this tension because you don't even know if your startup, like, you hope your startup's going to be successful. You hope you're going to make it, but things are so touch and go at the beginning until you get some stable revenue coming in. So there's this like stress of, do I get everything perfect now at the beginning, or do I conserve money to, spend on things that are actually going to generate revenue? And there's not a perfect answer. Like, of course, the same way that there's technical debt, there's legal debt. I'm much more probably laissez-faire and less lawyerly than a lot of lawyers out there, where I'm like, you can probably wait to get this perfect. And there's a couple things, like you want to file your 83B election. Like don't mess that up. That's really important. Otherwise you're going to have massive tax consequences on your shares in your company. Don't mess that up. But everything else can kind of be fixed in post. It's going to be more expensive, but the last thing you want to do is rack up, $100,000 legal bill, and you've only raised $250,000, and it would have been a lot better to use all that money to, build the company. So there's not a perfect answer. I mean, there are some pitfalls that you should avoid.
Those are some great. I mean, those are a couple of big ones. Those are a couple of great tips.
Yeah. So, and there's so many great tools to get you started where you just have to spend so little money. Use Clerky to incorporate. There's no reason you should pay thousands of dollars to set up a Delaware C Corp. Just plug it into Clerky, get yourself going. And there's, you can worry about, if you're too concerned about legal stuff, it can cloud you from building a great business. It's better to build a great business and then worry about legal stuff after.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's great advice. We met back in 2021 here in LA. First time we met in person, and the startup markets, the venture capital world at that time were dramatically different than they are today. And so they've gone through kind of some pretty serious pullbacks, a bit of a slowdown, maybe last year more so. How do you see things today, like kind of snapshot report, middle summer of 2024? And then how do you see the venture markets kind of rebounding over the next 5 years?
That's such a good question. It's tough to get a sense of what's actually happening because there's niches within the market that are still so hot. Things connected to AI infrastructure. You're still seeing great valuations and deals happening very quickly. Everything else, deals are still getting done. People are still raising money. It's just a bit slower where you could do a Series A in a couple weeks in 2020, 2021. It might take a couple months now for, an acquisition. Everything's still happening, especially if you've got a solid company that is growing quickly. Like it will happen. You'll get to where you need to go. It just takes a little bit longer.
Just slower.
And you have to have real revenue. You have to have a good growth story. It's not unless you have a really incredible pedigree, or you're a second-time founder, or you have some like super strong indicators. It's tough to raise a lot of money off of just a PowerPoint and some thoughts. So that's the crazy thing. You can, if you're an investor, you can get an insane deal on some very strong companies.
Right.
So, and it's difficult because there's so many parts of the market where you have to think about like what it is for the startups raising the money, what it is for the funds that also have to raise money from LPs, and like, do I do a capital call right now to get more money from LPs that was promised? So it's a complex equation, and I think the universal thing is things are just taking longer.
Yeah. Do you see this, I mean, barring some crazy unexpected return to zero interest rate free capital, flooding the markets again, which I don't see happening for another, 10 maybe year cycle or whatever. Like, do you see this kind of status quo that we're in now probably being what it is through like the rest of this decade, maybe?
Potentially. I mean, a lot of stuff was pulled so far forward with zero interest rates. So, people raised money when money was cheap. And there's a lot of company. I mean, I was talking to a founder in New York who's got runway for like 5 or 6 years. So he's just good to go. Doesn't have to worry about returning to the capital markets at all, because he had the foresight to, raise prematurely. And that was such a great move on his part. So a lot of the best companies raised way more than they needed and are set. And then companies that are struggling well, it's going to be difficult for them to raise regardless. So it almost doesn't matter what the market conditions are. Yeah, so maybe there's going to be hopefully there's going to be an increase in deals getting done and like deal velocity as all the hangover, not the hangover, but the effects of basically free money shakes out from a couple years ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, so I mentioned a few seconds ago that we met here in LA in 2021. What I didn't mention is we met for breakfast. I affectionately will claim that as the original Tech Breakfast Club. But I know you also were like touring around, meeting a bunch of people in the LA entrepreneurial economy, having breakfast with lots of people. So maybe the whole trip was inspiring for you. But you are, as we said in the beginning of the show, probably maybe more well known now for less for your lawyerly work and more for your having birthed this crazy, cool, fun community of Tech Breakfast Club. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so I had spent the summer here in LA hanging out with you. Also, shout out to Esprit Devora.
Yeah.
Huge influence on me as well. Went to some really great events, enjoyed, just hanging out that summer and meeting a lot of really interesting people. And then when I got back to New York, there was probably 12 or 15 people that I needed to catch up with. And maybe it was the confidence that like Esprit gave me, or, maybe it was the idea from us enjoying our breakfast so much. I was like, instead of just doing individual coffee chats with these 12 people, let's get together for breakfast. You'd all get along. So not only would it be good for me to catch up with you, but there'd be value add in meeting some cool, interesting people. And it was such a good time. We were like, we need to immediately do this again. So a couple weeks later, invited all the same people, but then they invited some people.
Okay.
And instead of 12 people, it was 30. And then like next time we did it was 60. And then next time we did it was 120. And it just like kept doubling there.
Insane.
And we, got kicked out of our original venue or restaurant that we were at because there was just too many people. And now we've like, just because there's so much interest and there's so many people who want to come, we're a little bit more selective on the guest list. Okay. And keep it to maybe like 60 people for a breakfast. Okay. But
because otherwise at some point it's not a breakfast of actual relationship building anymore. It's just like it's like a conference event where the restaurant happens to serve breakfast food.
Yeah, it gets a little bit too chaotic. I had no expectations for what it would become. And of course, like that's the one thing that hits. You have no expectations for something. Yeah, right. And then, and figuring out what the right way to like curate and steward the community. It took some trial and error. And then it was also, we had to figure out like how to engage with the community as well. So a big part of that was like doing a newsletter and making it like, it's almost embarrassing to think back on it because it's fake. In a lot of ways, it wasn't like a real thing. It was just my friends, right? And then with each like successive wave of new people, it became a little bit more of a thing, or like people started referring to it as a tradition. And so, yeah. And then you wake up.
You're like the tradition was like a selfish cheat code for me to catch up with 12 of my friends without having to have 12 visits with each friend. Like,
oh my God. And it was selfish because, breakfast is kind of the only time of the day that I'm free. Just like life as a lawyer, your work rolls in throughout the day. And by the time evening rolls around, you're very busy. And after canceling on like, the 20th dinner or drinks, I was like, all right, I gotta just make the most of my free time in the morning. But turns out, it taps into all these tailwinds around sober networking. Coffee is great compared to alcohol when, you're trying to discuss big ideas and form relationships, and people are just so engaged and energized early in the morning. And then as a filtering mechanism, I think it's also great because if you're willing to wake up early and come hang out, you have control over your time. You're enthusiastic about what you're doing. So none of this was part of the plan. I didn't think about that at the beginning, but just kind of stumbled into it.
That's awesome. No, it's really cool. I think I may bestow it. I may bestow the title upon you now instead of in the form of a question. I may just make a pronouncement and say that you're the only lawyer community builder that exists, like in the startup world, right?
Well, that might be because of the field and who it attracts. I don't think lawyers are the most social people to begin with, so the bar is very low. And it's true. Also, I'm in a unique situation where a lot of early career lawyers are not empowered to go do something creative.
Oh, right. 100%.
So, really fortunate to find myself in a position to be entrepreneurial, be creative, and go out and try and build something that's not directly related to my job.
Yeah, it has immense potential benefits for your job, right? Also because of just the network of relationships that you build, the exposure to community that you have, the bi-coastal nature of it now because of your personal life, choices and lifestyle, et cetera. No, I mean, it was as you say, as most great entrepreneurial stories or origin stories are, it was kind of a serendipitous, unplanned bit of entrepreneurial thinking about a series of things that already exist, right? And you utilize them to solve a problem, which in essence was, how do I get together with our friends and just do this more efficiently, fit it into our schedules, do it at a time of day that's better for everybody, more energetic. It just winds up being this kind of very beautiful thread of entrepreneurial thinking applied to the existing world, and then making the existing world for all these people just a little bit better, right? And a little bit more efficient and a little bit more useful, a little bit more valuable, as you would say, to each other, not just to you, right? It quickly became about other people. That's awesome.
That's such a hack in all aspects.
That's another way to say it. Yeah, it's a hack
of life, to be generative and generous. If you can, this was a great Twitter thread. I'll send it to you after we get done. But someone referred to it as like building your own yacht. If you can build your own yacht in life and invite people to come onto that yacht, that's way better than waiting around to get invited on somebody else's yacht. So
again, very entrepreneurial, right? I mean, that's the classic kind of thinking for most of us. That's awesome. Is there anything surprisingly for you? Is there anything that has surprised you that you've learned about yourself, like doing this now so prominently?
It's funny that you think friendships will come first and then maybe potentially business, but a lot of times it's the other way around, where like you'll do business with somebody and become great friends with them, which has been a surprise, a really pleasant surprise, to find that like, hey, you'll meet somebody and they have legal needs and they become a client, but then fast forward a year, 18 months, and you guys are great friends, which
it's awesome.
Yeah, maybe that's obvious to a lot of other people, but doing business together is kind of like the ultimate, when things go well, especially it's like the ultimate way to like get to know somebody and deepen a relationship, deepen a friendship.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny, right? Because there's conventional wisdom that's existed for most of my life, long before you were even alive, that always said, don't do business with friends, don't invest with friends, don't do all these things with friends, for fear that then, like, right, if they don't work out the way that you want them to, it intoxicates those friendships. And the truth is, there's 1,000,001 things that intoxicate friendships anyways, right? And there's 1,000,001 challenges to just maintaining a stable, healthy, emotional relationship with another human being, regardless. And so I've always thought it was strange. Like, I always thought, like, I do business, play sports, do whatever it is you do in life with other people that are like-minded, or that share some of those same interests or share some of those same passions or drivers. And you're likely to develop some strong relationships. Some of them will collapse. Some of them will be problematic. Some of them will be awesome, right? I mean, that's just life. Like when in the human arena, once you're outside of your own little bubble. So good for you. That's a great enduring lesson as well. All right, so I think I answered this in the opening because of something I saw on social media the other day, like literally within hours of me writing this script. But talk to us. Is there a growth plan for Tech Breakfast Club? I think I saw something that says they are coming to cities other than just Los Angeles and New York City now.
Yeah, so New York and LA both going very well. We just kicked off SF this past week and it was incredible. So the game plan is New York, LA, SF every month. And then we'll bounce around. Love to do Miami, love to do Austin, maybe a couple times a year. Love to do Boston a couple times a year. So the startup ecosystem is so strong in New York. It's so strong in SF. It's great in LA. So there's like enough people to new people and great relationships to kind of sustain a monthly meetup in those three big markets. And then going to like Austin for South by Southwest or potentially going down to Austin for like in October and catching up with a bunch of people. And that's been tremendous. And then the thing that makes me so happy is like taking people from one market to another market and plugging them in immediately to my network and the Tech Breakfast Club network. So seeing people come from New York and stop by LA, or New York and come to SF, or people from SF going to New York, or people from Boston coming down to New York. That's been, that's like, oh wait, there's even another level of value to create here.
That's incredible. Tech Breakfast Club on the road. Right?
Yeah.
Tech Breakfast Club road trips where it's, I mean, it's the same human dynamic of why a person chooses the same hotels that they choose, or the same, like, right. There's a comfort, there's a predictability. So now all of a sudden I know I'm going into a town. I can source out my Tech Breakfast Club people, and those people are probably within some range reflective of the Tech Breakfast Club people that I'm used to commiserating with in the city that I'm from. That's awesome.
Yeah, so super excited about that. And then leveraging the newsletter to introduce different founders, different VCs to the community. So wherever they go, they'll have, presence, or they'll have, relationships that they can tap into and make the most of.
That's really cool. And I noticed in the newsletter, like, you've started adding some sponsors. So you got some partners that are coming along to help make this all go.
Yeah. So mainly for like the events, and I'll shout out the sponsors for the events. Very grateful to Citizens, which the First Republic Bank team, a lot of them went over to Citizens after the collapse, and they totally get it. They love Tech Breakfast Club. They've been very generous in their sponsorship and making it happen in a bunch of different cities. So super grateful to them. Yeah, at first, it's funny. The first Tech Breakfast Club, when it was just like 12 friends together, I remember like Venmo requesting people for their breakfast. And now I'm like embarrassed thinking about that. And funny. It wasn't until, after doing it a couple times that started to get sponsorship interest, and people see the value in the community and want to be supportive of it. And it's so cool when Tech Breakfast Club members who've come to a couple meetups, they turn around and they, just because they so enjoy the community, they want to, pick up the check for a breakfast once in a while. So really grateful to that. Michael Carney, who absolute king of growth at Google, loves Tech Breakfast Club so much. He's like personally sponsored, which is insane to say, but like personally sponsored, an event. And I was so unexpected, so grateful for enthusiasm like that. Yeah, the sponsorship piece is definitely a headache. I wish it could be like turnkey and you wouldn't have to coordinate sponsors, wouldn't have to worry about it. But yeah, to be able to do a bunch of breakfast events, it had to like turn to a sponsorship model, and it's been really satisfying to see like just money appear to help make it happen.
That's great.
So yeah,
no, it's a testament. A testament. I mean, you love to deflect on everybody else. It's a testament to you and your relationships with these people, but it's also a testament to the community, right? It's a testament to the power of community in the broadest sense, as Esprit would tell us. But it's just a testament to your community in specific that is begun to foster this kind of, they want to see it thrive and survive, right? They want to see it go. So good for you. All right. So last segment, because we got to get you back to your lawyerly work today. We don't want you dallying around with doing podcasts all afternoon. All right. So in this last segment, what I love to do, I think we'll hit with two questions, and they're kind of actionable, kind of pieces of advice type thing. So one is around building community, and then the other one will be maybe we'll hit on a little prep, kind of legal prep work for young founders. But so first things first, quick 3 keys to building great community.
3 keys. All right, all 3 keys, same word: give, give, give.
There you go.
And yeah, that's you gotta give something, and over time it will compound, and you'll get everything that you gave back and then some. But especially at the beginning, it's a lot of hard work to figure out how to provide value to people, and you gotta make other people feel good about themselves and excited to come. And that's one of the reasons why I've always had a co-host or a company to celebrate, or a founder to celebrate. So I've always tried to leverage Tech Breakfast Club to give back, help people raise money, help people source deals. And if you're able to do that consistently, everything else just kind of takes care of itself.
Love it.
So yeah, it's never just about the person who's running the community. It's about the community members, which sounds obvious to say, but to have a healthy, functioning community, you have to be constantly celebrating others, giving back to others, figuring out ways to help and be of service.
That's awesome.
And if you can do that for long enough, you get some momentum, and it just becomes, there's this gulf where
100% agree.
This you think it's going to be this.
The simplest.
You think it's going to be linear, but it's actually geometric. But that means for a while, it's going to be a lot of hard work and arduous, and texting people invites to get them to come to something, and then you're going to look up one day and people are going to be texting you asking to come to it. So yeah,
good for you. It's age old wisdom coming from a young guy. You're channeling your dad there, because that was my dad's advice about most of business and career was give, give, give. Right? It was give, 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 or as he used to tell us when we were kids, give, give, ask. Right? So you put your ask at the end of having done more, given more than you asked for, which is awesome. All right, so quick, we hit on this earlier, but I think it's worth repeating just in case, because we talked about it in the context of mistakes that you see that founders make, or things that they do repeatedly. Let's narrow it down from the positive side and say, okay, so if you're setting up a new enterprise, what are the 2 or 3 first legal steps that every entrepreneur needs to lock down properly if they're going to be raising money from investors specifically?
Yeah, just to keep it simple, Delaware C Corp. A lot of people will come with an LLC, but it's tough to raise money with an LLC.
Yep.
And legal fees are a lot higher for that. So keep it simple. Delaware C Corp. Investors want to deal with the Delaware C Corp. It's easy to form that. Mentioned Clerky earlier. Use Clerky. You can keep your legal fees to go. You can raise a lot of money with very low legal fees. Use Clerky for formation. A lot of people like using just the straight up Y Combinator safe. And that's very familiar to basically every investor. They're comfortable with that. There's ways to make it more founder friendly, though. YC is a great organization, but at the end of the day, they are investors. So there are some things you can do to tweak a Y Combinator safe to make it founder friendly. The way that it and not to get too technical, it puts all the dilution on the founders, and is a little bit too generous in how it protects investors from dilution. So that's one pitfall, that you can raise a bunch of money on safes, and if you stack them at different valuations, the pie that the investors own never shrinks, but the pie that the founders have shrinks, where, maybe there's some debate that it should be shared equally among the investors and founders as you go along. That ultimately like stops and doesn't matter once you do a priced round, like a Series A round. That's a pitfall that a lot of founders don't think about. On a personal level, mentioned 83Bs. Yep. Don't mess around with that. Send that in. Yeah. Other than that, it's
those are your keys. I mean, those are like, hey, if you're getting started, you got to put these 2 or 3, 4 pieces in place. Everything else we can worry about later, but those are the keys to really focus on.
Yeah. And so also, if you're a founder who's getting started and you just want the playbook on how to do this as efficiently and as cost effectively as possible, talk to me. I'm happy to give you the roadmap and walk you through it. It's nice to have a little bit of hand holding, but these are all pretty inexpensive tools that you can use to get going. It's crazy that 20 years ago, if you wanted to raise money as a venture-backed startup, your legal fees were astronomical. And then just in like the last 10 years, all these different really low-cost tools that are great. People ask, are you worried about, as a lawyer, being replaced by AI or all these kind of plug and play tools? And my response is like, this is amazing, because this is like the least interesting legal work.
Right.
That would eat up all your time. And now you can focus on bigger problems, the more interesting, sophisticated transactions. Exactly. So big advocate of all these fantastic legal tools.
Oh, that's awesome. Buddy, this is a blast. Thank you. We wanted to do it for a while. I appreciate your time and energy. I'm super stoked, actually, especially grateful that your dad came along with us on the journey today. So that makes this a little bit more special today. How can people either follow you or find you on social media? How can they find Tech Breakfast Club, and then how can they find if you want them to find the firm?
Tech Breakfast Club. If you find me on LinkedIn or you find me on Twitter, Morgan Barrett X on Twitter, and then Morgan Barrett on LinkedIn, and then there's a sign up link in both of those profiles for the newsletter. Get in the newsletter, sign up for the next Tech Breakfast Club. If you're not in New York, LA, or SF, we're happy to have you when you are. And if you're in another city like Austin, Miami, Boston, maybe we'll go to Seattle eventually. So come find us, or maybe we'll, eventually find you. So just sign up for the newsletter. Everything you need to know is in there.
That's awesome. Thanks, bud.
Rob, it was a pleasure. Thanks.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. We can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.